of the 2025 FI Formula 1 World Championship, which of course was run at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. Welcome here to the Mexican Grand Prix exclusive race reaction by Ferrari's biggest fan. And we've obviously last time out that we won the Grand Prix in the Formula 1. It happened at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, so we definitely wanted to go for a victory. Did we get it? We definitely should have. At least we've gotten the best qualifying of the year. Obviously, with Leclerc claiming the pole, for example, in Hungary, you might say that would be a better qualifying, but both drivers did a fantastic job, qualified second and third, and actually I would say half of the job was done. So over here in this exclusive race reaction, we will tell you exactly why we won't be celebrating with that rhythmic, with that wonderful Italian anthem over here, and why we again, just like from 2022 to 2023, why we will be going whole year without the actual Grand Prix victory. And again, we were just a whisker away, but I believe we just got a bit unlucky at the start. I think we also didn't run the best strategy, which we will discuss as we will then turn the Scuderia Red Retina iMac around and show you, for example, how certain drivers, especially the Red Bull villain, benefited from the right strategy. And we will also take a look at the Drivers' Championship, because there's one big change that hasn't happened since the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. I'm sure you can locate it on this wonderful calendar there, here to my right. And the Drivers' Championship is really going to heat up, especially as we now finish the fifth, sixth of the season. So for the final sixth of the season, which will of course also feature 2 sprint races, everything is out there to play for apart from the constructors table. So I was quite encouraged, not just by the beautiful weather, obviously here in the Central America at such a high altitude of over 2,000 meters, where of course the Mexican Grand Prix is located, but also especially the pace that we had, right? So as the drivers set up with this Ferrari SF1000T818 Formula 1 racing simulator, or more like the 2025 versions of a very similar wheel, we started with the first practice one. Leclerc was dominating it because it was mostly kind of designated or devoted to the drivers, the reserve drivers and the young drivers. So some guys like, for example, Fukuoka, he's gotten a chance, obviously finished off a last one, but did a great job in the World Endurance Championship. And then from free practice 2, once Hamilton was there, I could tell that we were right on the pace. And this is exactly, if you watch the last year's Mexican Grand Prix and miss all of the races and would come here, you would think it must be a mammoth fight between McLaren and the Ferrari for the World Championship, right? Because in terms of the performance, it kind of leveled out. And I would say that especially given Piastri's struggles, we were actually the stronger team. And so then when the qualifying came, I was pretty pleased, with the qualifying that we put in. And finally, it did look like smooth sessions, right? It was the other teams, that were struggling. And this is exactly what has to be happening, and especially going into the next 2026 season, it will be absolutely crucial that we can always qualify well. And this year, it's pretty much, all about who gets first into the turn one. And here, as you do know, that run up to the turn one is massive, because you basically start at the start of the straight, so we didn't know if we didn't get a pole position. We didn't know that nothing was lost, because you had a great opportunity. And if you have gotten through the kind of the 3 90-degree corners and then out of the turn 3 in a leading position, then again you could control the race, or it would be very difficult for others to overtake, right? Unless they had an alternate strategy, or unless you had some other car problem, which is a little bit, it goes kind of against the spirit of the ground effect regulations. Remember in 2022, even the following year, even kind of last year, we had so many overtakes, but nowadays, basically all the engineers, everybody has, kind of fine-tuned the car so well that again, it is really difficult, to get ahead of the guys. So when we went to the qualifying 3, then it was, great to see that Leclerc, with few minutes to go, he was first. Hamilton was third. I was like, let's go, this is looking good, especially as, Piastri Piastri was humbled in a big time with Red Bull struggling, Mercedes being few tenths of the pace. This was turning out to be great, right? So as I said, if you would have missed the whole year of F1, you would be thinking, wow, who's leading the championship? Is it Leclerc? Is it Norris? Maybe Hamilton, maybe Piastri. But of course, we know that the season has turned out completely differently. Maybe the high altitude had something to do with it, that obviously we were able to produce more power, and again, that could have something to do with it. But in general, I was just happy, maybe especially like what Hamilton said, that the processes work fine. So we were at the track at the right time, and we were able to deliver really competitive times. But once Norris put in the time of 1 minute 15.5, which is, by the way, 1.4 seconds slower than I went after I became obviously the Formula 1 world champion in racing, not for the first time, because I've already done it in 2017, 2017, but I had a 100% record, as you know, of winning as being the fresh champion in that current year. So, I was absolutely flying in qualifying, but, great job by Leclerc to get into 1 minute 15s, and, it looked like he could be on pole, but actually Hamilton, better him a little bit, then Leclerc, put it on the front row, and we started second and third, which is amazing, considering, that how the season has gone. So from then on, once the red lights went on, everybody has obviously prepared, especially Hamilton. He said, look, starting from P3, we have a great chance, because you will be that first car to get a slipstream, because the first two cars, they gotta be punching through the air, and they do not have, anybody basically, to clear the air, for you. So the advantage was to Hamilton, and we knew that the pole sitter wasn't necessarily winning, and we knew that Norris usually wasn't so strong, right, off the pole. But guess what? With Ferrari's right behind him, he gets the best start from the pole position probably in his career. So we actually dropped back a little bit. So Leclerc didn't get a great start. Hamilton only made up little ground. So what happened was that you basically had Norris, Leclerc, Hamilton, right? And once they started, they basically all converged and were all following each other. We were also able to easily, cover off Russell. And then, the race, it was really a lot about the third one. Hugely entertaining, and I have to say, just like I said, I cannot believe that there was not any, a huge accident, because there was, thankfully the track is so wide. Going into the third one, Norris obviously leading, but knowing that the guys are coming, he completely blocked off the inside, being quite aggressive. But obviously he knew, this could be really good for his championship hopes. With Piastri down in 8, which became 7 with Sainz's penalty. Hamilton still, had that bit of an advantage, but because he had to tussle with Leclerc, he wasn't just able to go straight, so, he had to position himself pretty much, behind Norris, right? You had Leclerc here who tried to go a little bit to the right, but notice Hamilton is there, right? Hardly any space. And then the craziest, of all was, of course, 5th place is also a relatively good place to start from. Verstappen starting from there, and, he went all the way down the outside. And then, I cannot believe, so Norris, kept on the position. Hamilton then started finally slipstreaming Norris, but pretty much in the final third of the straight, and he actually got, marginally ahead of Leclerc, but definitely just next to the Norris, who, was then always going to, turn right, and he had the advantage, so well done to him. That was pretty much, the race gone once, we were unable to match that really good start by the McLaren, because if, for example, Hamilton or Leclerc would have gotten the same start, they would then be able, to slipstream him. So well played, surprisingly, actually, by McLaren's. And then, of course, what happened is that we had to go a little bit to the left. Verstappen was pushed on the curb. What a pity, that didn't result in a big collision from his side, and then, of course, he cut the track. And this is, where the race really started to turn sour, right? So Leclerc, he eventually also just cut the track. He was first, but he let Norris go. And then it was pretty much Norris and Leclerc kind of disappearing from Hamilton, because he suddenly came behind Verstappen, who just came onto the track. To me, that was a big frustration. This is really testament, to cheating, and how, despite the fact that you can have all the success in the world, all the titles, 4-time world champion, just like me, but just blatantly cut the corner, in a game that you could have seen, if I've done that, that's a slam dunk penalty. But here it was like, it's okay, because he's fighting for a world championship. So, of course, Verstappen gave the position to Hamilton, but then he was running right behind him, and of course on lap 6 attempted a crazy, really out of control move. Pushed Hamilton out right at the apex. It was all 2021 again. This time again, Red Bull attacking Ferrari, banging wheels with Ferrari. Hamilton doing great job pushing Verstappen off in turn 2. But guess what? Okay, I don't want to lose a position. I'm a Red Bull, so I will just cut across the grass. And then again, Verstappen is ahead, right? And this is costing you lots of time. Both drivers, they cost 3 to 5 seconds just in this car couple. Hugely frustrating, I have to say, that I really hope one of the orange McLarens will win the title, because it would be a really disservice to Michael Schumacher, who of course was also known for some of the tough maneuvers, but he wouldn't do it, or pretty much every single time he's under pressure. Here Verstappen really playing it dirty, pushing Hamilton to the outside on that lap 6, turn 4. Hamilton looked up a little bit, but then he was the one who went across the grass, because Verstappen also missed the corner, so he also went across the grass. Crucially, Oliver Behrman, who of course, was that super sub for Ferrari in Saudi Arabia, has gotten ahead, now running fourth, ahead of Verstappen. But that also meant that as Hamilton had to go down the escape road, but because he went over the grass, he's kind of kept the third place, which he originally had. And then the most unbelievable of things happened. So you have 5 to 10 laps, and basically the stewards are deliberating, right, looking at the telemetry and everything what's happening, and just like George Russell said, just like Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton, I mean, these are guys who are world champions who said, look, you are basically punished for staying within the white lines, right? Because if you just go across the grass, which doesn't really hurt you, you let the other guy go, you would have never been there if there was a gravel. Of course, some proponents would say, let's have a barrier or a wall there, but, that probably, would be way too dangerous, especially if you had it at 300 kilometers per hour, if you have any brake failure, if you have any accident right before the braking zone, that would be terrible. But yeah, like with that grass, and the way the track is structured, of course, it makes sense to just go down the outside, and, knowing fully well that if you boxed out, then you just flick to the left, apply a bit of a throttle, go across the grass, and pretty much everything stays as it were. So yeah, hugely frustrating, especially because the stewards didn't award any penalty to Verstappen for blatantly pushing off Hamilton into turn 1, and of course, for the turn 4, when Hamilton, had to go evasive on the grass, he did, to be honest, gain a bit of an advantage, because they were side by side with Verstappen, and he came out a couple of seconds ahead of him. Never slowed down though, so, I was just wondering, why not let, the other car go, but because now Verstappen was behind Behrman, kind of hard to give the position back, right? And avoid the penalty, which actually would have been very important, because I do believe that even though we would have had to give the position to Verstappen, which, would have been crazy, but, you could maybe kind of understand it, then we would have still be able to comfortably finish fourth if you look at it, how it all finished. So as a result, Hamilton was running third, and then bang, lap 10, 20, maybe 15, 20, he was smacked with 10-second penalty. Verstappen getting no penalty at all. I mean, I was like, well, that has to be at least 5 seconds as well. I believe if they both have gotten the penalty, that probably would have been a fair outcome, right? Verstappen pushing Hamilton out, and then, Hamilton, frankly speaking, overtaking still, on the outside, even though they both went off the track. But hey, isn't that, for example, what happened in Austin, right? Where George Russell, there is a runoff, there is no grass at the end of that long straight in the circuit of the Americas, where Russell, for example, dive-bombed Verstappen, they both went off the track, and Verstappen kept the position. Yeah, I guess double standards, 100% double standards. As a result, when Hamilton was stationary for 10 seconds, he dropped back from a podium position to the back of the pack, and then finished 8th, because you were basically stuck behind the both Mercedes drivers who were forming that DRS train. Yeah, then as a result, but for us, we were still on course for a second place. I was hoping that it was going to work with Hamilton, but because the medium tire, Verstappen, it is very important to know, started on the medium tire, on the yellow tire, and we all started on a soft tire. So actually, he had a better strategy, because the soft tire was better. So by the time, once it was a one-stop race mostly for the top 3. For the rest, it was a 2-stop race. So once the drivers, changed the tires, if you were then on the mediums, you were struggling. So that helped, for example, Verstappen to easily, clear, for example, Behrman. And also, Hamilton with the penalty, then he had a clear air, and with better tires, he was able to really, Leclerc, Norris has disappeared half a minute down the road. That's a bit concerning. For obviously, Lewis Hamilton, he again, was basically then stuck in there. So what we tried when we then had a gap to kind of, Sainz, who by the way has always gotten a speeding penalty, what we then did was actually very, very simple. We simply decided to stop again, but crucially the message was broadcast on the radio. Hamilton had an opportunity to undercut, I believe that was both Antonelli and Piastri, so they both stopped, as we were about to stop, and great job, by the McLaren boys to overtake Mercedes on the track, but it meant that we were behind them on the same strategy, and basically if you have, the same strategy, right, same age of the tires, it is really, really difficult to overtake unless you have a serious pace advantage, which frankly speaking, only Norris had. So, that's how it was. And you could see, for example, how Berman, because he was always kind of running in a free air, didn't have anybody in front of him, how he was able to, for example, keep Verstappen on that medium tire behind until he himself stopped, and how he was able to keep Piastri, for example, behind for the final 10 laps. And the same went for Leclerc, who, of course, Verstappen caught up with him, had a better tire strategy, but guess what, with 2 laps to go, Carlos Sainz, spun in the stadium section, and there was a bit of a controversial VSC, virtual safety car, but, it had to be deployed. Actually, it should have been deployed twice during the race. Maybe you noticed it wasn't actually broadcast, but Liam Lawson of Racing Bulls almost took out the mechanics, the marshals, who were picking up the pieces of his wing that he lost when he contacted with Sainz, which is why Sainz lost the sensors in his wheel, and he's gotten 2 speeding penalties, the pit lane speeding penalties. They just simply came onto the track. They didn't know that Lawson, would be coming up. They thought everybody, pretty much they had over a minute to clear it. Man, they were just running across the track. Lawson was like, what's going on? No yellows there. A big mistake. That usually doesn't happen in F1. That's one of the great things about Formula One, that it's well managed. But, this definitely what I'm saying, investigation. So no surprise when the VSC came in that stadium section, one of the best podiums, I would say, after Monza, the second best podium in the world, basically, because the marshals had to come onto the track and push Sainz in. The VSC had to come out for about 30 seconds, and that was actually crucial because Verstappen, who was within the DRS zone of Leclerc with the final lap, and same for Piastri with Berman, they didn't have a chance to overtake, and this is how then the race finished. So let's take a look at it over here. So entertaining race, but again, not so much of a fight for the top spot, which Norris won by over 30 seconds. Second, Charles Leclerc, Scuderia Ferrari, fantastic job. Once again, Leclerc being on the form, and Hamilton, frankly, should have been there. But even if, for example, Verstappen would overtake him, for sure, he could have easily been fourth. So it's mind-blowing that Verstappen didn't get a penalty, and look how much it cost us. It's really, really terrible, that we ended up so far back. Fourth, Oliver Bergman, just like Norris, I believe, driver of the day. This is his best result in F1, and he's knocking on that Ferrari seat. I mean, few more results like this, and he will definitely be in contention. Fifth, Oscar Piastri, and this is very critical, right? Because of that VSC, that also means that Piastri has lost 15 points to Norris, and he had the lead of, I believe, 14 points, so now he's 1 point behind, as we will soon see. Sixth, Antonelli did a good job over here, finishing it up with his illustrious teammate George Russell, who even asked for a swap, but obviously it was so difficult to overtake, and great result for Antonelli to outpace Russell pretty much for the first time since Miami. Eighth, Lewis Hamilton, pretty much dejected, like you could feel the anger and the unfairness, the disappointment in his voice, and 8 was then the best he could have mastered. 9, then Ocon, underlying that Haas was strong, and 10, Gabriel Bortoleto with, of course, George Russell claiming the fastest lap, but then being only 1 minute 20 seconds. If you watched that race that I did, I went significantly faster. So it has a big ramifications for the championship over here. So let's take a look at it. This is the 2025 Drivers' Championship, and Lando Norris is now leading for the first time in 15 races with 357 points. Oscar Piastri only a point behind on 356 points. Huge fight, there for a World Championship in the final 6 of the season. Max Verstappen, Red Bull, 321 points. I think, it's shown that, you will not be always lucky get on a pole position. Yeah, we will see again, what happens. Obviously, Verstappen, I think if he can get 3 out of the 4 races where he could qualify on the pole and challenge the McLarens, he could take it to Abu Dhabi, but I wouldn't be surprised that maybe just like in Brazil, when Norris's charge last year ended there. Maybe that's where Verstappen's charge will end, because we will have the 5th sprint Grand Prix of the weekend with the sprint and with the Grand Prix. And if again he finishes outside of the podium or behind both McLarens, that will be game over. And now George Russell, 4th position for Mercedes, still technically mathematically in it, 99 points behind, 258 points. Obviously, you do know that there are 116 points on offer. But Russell is due to finish 4th. Charles Leclerc 5th for Ferrari, 210 points. So, I think Leclerc should still be aiming to maybe try to catch up to Russell, 48 points behind. But look, if we stay competitive, some of the tracks, Brazil, we've always been strong, especially Las Vegas, that's a slam dunk. If we improve the Middle East, who knows what can happen? We hope that Lewis Hamilton for Scuderia Ferrari, 146 points. This means it's his worst season in Formula 1 in terms of how many podiums. He's never gotten less than 5 podiums in a season, Grand Prix podiums, that is, of course, great sprint victory, which means that now with 4 races to go, I hope he will still make it onto the podium at least once. 7th, then Andrea Kimi Antonelli for Mercedes, 97 points. 8th, Alexander Albon Williams, 73 points, but again, being mediocre pretty much ever since summer. 9, Nico Hülkenberg, Kick Sauber, 41 points. He had to retire due to the engine issues, so that was it. 10, Isaac Hadjar Racing Bulls, 39 points. 11, Carlos Sainz, the pit lane speeder, or speedster, we should say, for Williams, 38 points. Then we have 12, Fernando Alonso, Aston Martin, 37 points. And Oliver Behrman now jumped to 13th place for Haas, 32 points. Look at this. He is the team leader there now. So you could see, that Ocon, was happy, but he knew what that meant. 14, Lance Stroll, Aston Martin, 32 points. 15, Liam Lawson, Racing Bulls, 30 points. Thankfully, didn't hurt any of the mechanics, or, that would have been on the top news. 16, of course, then Esteban Ocon Haas, 30 points, gotten some points, but wow, that will be a big fight for supremacy there at Haas. 17, Yuki Tsunoda, Red Bull Racing, 28 points. Again, Verstappen, easily on the podium, because he wasn't penalized, but even if he would be penalized, miles ahead of Tsunoda, I guess he should enjoy the final 6th of the season. And then we have 18, Pierre Gasly, Alpine, 20 points. 19, Gabriel Bortoleto, Kick Sauber, of course, 19 points. 28 is Franco Colapinto, Alpine. He finished right behind Gasly. He's on 0 points. Bit unlucky that he didn't have the seat maybe for the first 6 races, but overall, for Colapinto, 0 points. Should he even be retained? And Jack Doohan, 21st for Alpine from Australia, 0 points there, of course. So this is how the driver's table looks like. Let's take a look at the constructor's table. So McLaren leading with 713 points, but obviously, it will be very, very difficult for them to challenge the Red Bull's record for the outright points now. Second, Scuderia Ferrari, 356 points. So just like Norris overtook Piastri, we overtook Mercedes, who are now third, 355 points. And I think we will consolidate that position in the final 6th of the season. We definitely deserve to finish second. The funny thing is, Red Bull Racing is 4th with 346 points, 10 points behind us. 5th, Williams, 111 points. 6th, Racing Bull, 72 points. But that will be a huge fight for the 6th place, because 7 is Aston Martin, 69 points. But look at 8, Haas, 62 points, and 9, Kick Sauber, 60 points. They will all want to get it. There's a lot of money on offer. Also, the bonuses, for example, for the team members, depend on it. So it will be interesting to see what happens. And 10, Alpine, 20 points. Yeah, it's great that, even the slowest team can get 20 points, not just like almost no points like last year, but they are far behind, aren't they? So that was the constructor's table, the driver's table, and this is how the race finished. Congratulations to Norris. This could be one of the crucial victories over here, but the championship is far from over, and we will be fighting for the final 6 of the season, so wish us a good luck with that. Norris was also the guy who, of course, beat me, and who can then claim the honor of being the only driver who can go faster in a Grand Prix after I become a world champion, because I ran out of the fuel in that race. As you could have seen, I'm so disappointed about it, because obviously, we wanted, really wanted over here, to go, for that exclusive, of course, record that we have, which is the exclusive record of having the 20 Grand Prix victories, but we can still equal Verstappen, obviously, with 19. So wish me good luck with that. Wish good luck to Scuderia Ferrari. Hey, we won't be racing the next weekend, because this was a double header, not a triple header. So let's enjoy the sunny North, Central, and South America, and we will be back in the second week of November with some racing in the land of Samba. So let's go from the land of the Carnival, celebrating the Halloween, to the land of the Samba, and let's finally bring our